besties, and welcome back to my channel. Today we're talking about shows that rewired my brain chemistry as a book girly, even though I technically watched them when I wasn't a book girly. But you know those shows that just feel like you're reading a book on television? I have very niche and weird taste in shows, but yet simultaneously really basic. But I do think that they very much shaped the books that I read, and it made me really wonder why I never read books considering I watched such magical television. Mind you, I used to be super into shows. I was a chronic binge watcher, but never once did I think, ooh, perhaps there's a book like this. So I never fucking read. And instead, I consumed every piece of media that made me feel the way that books make me feel now. So let's get into it. Once Upon a Time, my all-time favorite show, despite how kind of horrible it is. If you don't know what Once Upon a Time is, what the fuck? It is about storybook characters, Disney storybook characters, every Disney film you've ever watched, all living in one town called Storybrooke. None of them know that they're storybook characters, which is a little bit bizarre. And I think it's quite the premise for a show, but they kept it running for way too long, and I don't care. I watched every single season of it. You cannot tell me that it got worse. I know it did, and I don't give a fuck. It is genuinely so bad that it is so good. It's like if you gave a Wattpad author the ability to write a screenplay, and then she made the most bizarre crossovers. I don't know if it's because my feed is so messed up. I don't know if you've seen those swipe posts where it's like Spider-Man is in love with Elsa, but Elsa's secretly pregnant with Gojo's child. No? Oh. I feel like somebody has to know what I'm talking about. Or, you know, like the pretend that airplanes in the night sky, like shooting stars in the twilight sparkle and Mordecai, like love song. I don't know if you've seen people cosplaying that, whatever. That is quite literally what it feels like watching Once Upon a Time. You think Avatar was a Beauty and Beast retelling? Wait until Farrah starts dating Rumpelstiltskin and he is hotter as a gremlin than he is as a human being. Oh my god, and Killian Jones, that's exactly who I'm going to be picturing when I'm reading Hooked, because that man transformed the way that I think about Captain Hook. It is the best Captain Hook romance and redemption arc that has ever been written. I don't even think that this one's gonna top it. And I personally don't give a shit if they describe him completely different. This is all I'm gonna be picturing. Next, the best historical romance adaptation ever made, Reign. Based on the real Mary Queen of Scots and her blonde betrothed, Francis, and his bastard brother with dark hair who happens to be in love with her, Sebastian. Does that sound familiar to you at all? No? No? Okay. Reign is quite literally everything Powerless is, but actually powerless. Like, imagine that on screen, but genuinely like 30 times better, which is a bold statement. But you haven't seen Reign yet, I'm assuming, so you'll know what I mean when you get there. This show quite literally consumed my brain chemistry. It built everything that I love about historical romance, and the Mary and Francis edits do indeed consume my entire For You page at least once a week. And when I say I love historical romances, I mean it. I'm convinced I've watched every single historical romance show that has ever aired on television. And here's another one of my favorites, Bridgerton. Need I say more? You haven't watched any historical romance? It's like a perfect step in. One, the music is modern. At this point, they have played Gasolina on the piano. I think they played Pitbull on like the fucking violins. It is like modern day historical romance. There is gossip, there is scandal, and this is what I call a good show with yearning and slow burn. They couldn't do anything back then without completely disgracing their family, so everything was very just like, they touched finger, oh. And mind you, you do not know yearning the way that Anthony Bridgerton does yearning. That is how you create a perfect regal style enemies to lovers. Anthony and Kate were the perfect enemies to lovers. It is not far enough. Do you think that there is a corner of this earth that you could travel to far away enough to free me from this torment? I am a gentleman. My father raised me to act with honor, and that honor is hanging by a thread that grows more precarious with every moment I spend in your presence. You are the bane of my existence and the object of all of my desires. He ate with that line. I was like sweating profusely because I genuinely thought he hated her, and he was like the object of all my desires, and I was swooning. The absolute high that I got from binge watching Bridgerton is unmatched, and I am going to put you on The Rose Bargain because this book is literally Bridgerton inspired. It has the yearning, it has the style, the whole like finding the perfect person to marry. It is the same exact vibe as Bridgerton, and it gave me that high. The only problem is that there's only one book left, but she did just announce the second book. Plus, soon we also get the next season of Bridgerton. I need Benedict's season immediately so that it could finish, because my girl Eloise is being underappreciated as a character and they have left her for last, and I don't think that is fair. Eloise deserves her time to shine. The Spanish Princess. It's about Catherine of Aragon, one of the many wives of Henry VIII, and how their love story started. You know Six, the musical? Don't worry, don't lose your head. Spoiler, she got beheaded because Miss Boleyn came into the picture. I will have you know that these events did indeed happen in the 1500s. For background, Henry VIII had 6 wives. He had a thing for marrying many people and then executing them. This one specifically follows Catherine, which was one of his greatest loves, I believe, out of the 6. And it genuinely made me feel so much for Catherine and everything that she went through in a way that broke my heart for her, which I didn't think would happen, considering I didn't think there was a lot of depth in Henry's relationship. It was so beautiful and it was so tragic. It genuinely tore me to shreds because of how deeply I fell in love with their relationship, but we know history told how that didn't end well. But the show is still worth watching even though you know the ending. That covers my historical romance. We're gonna move on to kind of my freaky taste in shows, and that is Dark. One of the best thriller shows I have ever seen. It left me completely mind-fucked and is by far the best sci-fi, and I hate sci-fi. Not a sci-fi girl. Might read Red Rising, not a sci-fi girl, that I have ever watched. It is a German sci-fi dystopian thriller where timelines overlap and the present was pretty much set up by the past that was affected by the future. I was so invested in the show and so incredibly confused trying to figure it out that I quite literally rewatched the show and took notes on every single time skip, every single plot twist that was revealed. That's how many plot twists were revealed. That's how many timelines overlap. It was insane. You can technically watch it without deep diving it like this, but I like to analyze my media. Let me set the scene for episode 1. There was a dad and he kind of like offed himself and leaves a note that needs to be opened at a specific date and time years in the future. So he did not leave like a final note. So nobody knew why he did what he did until they read that final note like 10 years later. And around the time that happened, a child from another family goes into a tunnel and disappears. And he reappears in 1986, where another child had gone missing in the 80s, which happened to be his uncle. Yeah, you see where you see why I had notes? That's not even like 5-10 minutes of the first episode. The show goes from like 1888, 1920s, and it goes all the way up until like 2500, then skips to like 9102. And I'm pretty sure Adam and Eve is sprinkled in there somewhere. It was insane. I don't even know how they kept the timelines in line. And I even watched a video on how like the scriptwriters, the directors, whatever, came up with the plot, and apparently they were coming up with it as they filmed. So nobody knew what was going on while they were filming. They just got told like, here you go. But yet somehow they had zero plot holes. It's such a strong story and such a perfect show, and nobody talks about it because it's foreign. But let me tell you, the best shows are foreign shows. Which brings me to one of my favorite Espanol shows, Casa de Papel, Money Heist. I feel like everyone knows this show at this point. It got really popular when Netflix picked it up, and they were pulling the most ambitious heist. They robbed a bank and they robbed it really well. I really love shows where you genuinely don't know what's gonna happen next, and I feel like Money Heist is one of those that did it to perfection. Nothing that you thought was gonna happen really happened. Every time you thought that something was going wrong, a billion other things were planned from the beginning, but then you never knew when something went wrong, if it really went wrong. I had my jaw on the floor the entire time that I was watching that show. I don't think I've ever binge watched a show as fast as that one. I think I saw maybe 2 seasons within one day. Also, just a little side note, El Profesor, he shifted a little bit in my brain chemistry. He's so socially awkward, but so smart that it was really precious, but then randomly he'd be like, ooh, and I was like, ooh. I'm not gonna get into it, it's kind of embarrassing. But I can assure you, if you watch that show, there's not a single filler episode, there's not a single episode that leaves you bored, because everything's always like on fire. And every season is a different heist. And I thought that would get boring because I'm just like, okay, we robbed the bank once. Why are we gonna rob the next one? Girl, I don't know how they keep coming up with these magical plans, but I think they're onto something. Another one of my favorite book genres does happen to be dark romance. And you wanna know where that started? It may or may not have started with Dexter, the original sinful man of Miami. I don't know why he was so attractive. I remember when the show was coming out, everybody was really confused about why we were rooting for a cold-blooded murderer. But God, Dexter played it so well. He played psychosis to perfection. Though it does have significant less romance because it's not a romance-centered show, it is a murder-centered show. I would recommend it for my dark romance girlies because they don't be making shows like that anymore. Pretty much, Dexter was a police officer and he would look at all these cases, see all of these horrible people, and he'd go out of his way, like the kind citizen that he is, and kill them. So he'd take the police information, do the job himself, and they're like, huh? The criminal vanished. What happened? Yeah, Dexter got there. Being on the inside of the police, it was very easy for him to get all of the information and get away with it, but then at the same time, there were people who were still very suspicious because how could all of these criminals keep disappearing if somebody didn't have all of the information on it? You know the guy that you see like in the TikTok comment section that just goes like, I know he did it, I just can't prove it. That guy. That guy's in Dexter. That's how perfect and how timeless Dexter is. It is an old show. I don't care. It is absolute perfection. And I'm gonna tell you, the ending of season 3, I had to take a break from the show because it was so painful. Oh my God. Dark romance girlies, babies. If you like dark romance and you haven't watched Dexter, you're doing a disservice to yourself. I'm gonna compile these two together because they are the same exact vibe. And it is The Vampire Diaries and Teen Wolf. It is supernatural. There are love triangles and men who love to bite. And it is the epitome of what the Tumblr era, best era of TV was. Everybody always talks about The Vampire Diaries. And I had to like weasel in Teen Wolf there because nobody talks about it, and it literally came out around the same time, and it was just about wolves, and they were hot. And it is way ahead of its time, and it is where Dylan O'Brien really served his shit. Styles Stilinski, I still love you. Those two shows made me feel like this. They made me feel like Quicksilver. I don't care to elaborate any further, but this is the vibe. And another perfect book to screen adaptation of books, Game of Thrones, baby. Game of Thrones is how a fantasy show should be put on screen. Epic political fantasy, dragons, wars, betrayals. It literally sounds like a fantasy book because it is one. It is quite literally adult Throne of Glass, which means I fucking love Game of Thrones. It is what Throne of Glass could be if somebody gave her a chance to be on screen. Just do it! And finally, I'm gonna put you onto one of the best horror shows ever written, and that is Haunting of Hill House. They also have the spin-off Haunting of Bly Manor. I was horrified by both, and both of them were absolutely amazing. The screenwriter, Kate Siegel, she literally stars in them because she's also so fucking amazing and she's such a good actress. She writes the best horror shows and movies. She screenwrote for Ouija, Gerald's Game, Midnight Mass, which is another really, really good show. My favorite all-time horror movie, Oculus. The way that she writes these productions are like mindfuck, because I love shows that completely like mess with your brain. I love like trippy shit like that and like spooky shit like that. So I think it's about time that I start reading my gothic books, and it's the perfect season for it. Those are probably the shows that I think about on like a weekly basis, some of them on a daily basis, some of them consume my entire social media, but in general, they are shows that I feel like fit any type of reader. Whether you like thrillers, historical romances, romantasy, paranormal romances, anything that's just not like normal, because I don't really dabble a lot in contemporary romances. But if you haven't seen some of these shows, you're gonna have to add them to your TBW to be watched soon. Because it feels like the holidays are binge watching season and you're gonna take these recommendations, write them down, save this video, and watch the shows. If you have watched any of these shows, you have phenomenal taste, which is biased, but I don't care. And if you have any other shows that you think fit that vibe or you think that I would like, I'm in desperate need to dive into TV again because I don't remember the last time that I binge watched a show that wasn't reality TV. So if you do have any suggestions, please comment them because I really want to get back into watching good TV. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. I would love to continue expanding on TV. I have a lot of rotting knowledge that is waiting to be shared. I also have a ton of anime recommendations for the book girlies because I think the book girlies are underhyping anime. It is quite literally everything you read on screen because animated shows are superior. I have a ton of historical romance recommendations. I've watched a ton of fantasy shows. I've watched a ton of dark romance style shows. Ask me and I will provide. If you want to see any of those, please subscribe and turn on your post notifications so you don't miss out on these amazing recommendations if I do say so myself. Thank you guys so much for watching and I'll see you guys on Saturday. Bye!